Welcome to the podcast series, Everything They Taught Us Was a Lie. In this episode, my co-host and I, Darrett, will be discussing why it was necessary and important for the English in particular to develop laws that achieved two things. One, to protect the interests and property of the elite ruling class, made up mainly of the white and brown mixed race or mulatto planters and slave owners. Two, to control the reluctant forced labor, otherwise called slaves.
Ms. Val, since we will be talking about Jamaica, I would like to regress a little, go back to the beginning of the English association with Jamaica. You remember what you were taught about when the English took Jamaica in 1655?
Oh, yes. I was taught that they captured Jamaica from the Spanish. And to my mind, capture means to steal.
Yes, but what happened when they captured Jamaica from the Spanish?
Well, Jamaica had to have something that they thought was very important.
Well, they did, because remember, when the English came to Jamaica, it was part of Cromwell's Western design.
Oh, yes, yes.
And
yes,
having
yes.
failed to take Hispaniola, they came to Jamaica.
Oh, yes, yes.
And it took from 1655 when they came to 1667, I think, for them to actually own Jamaica.
So, in other words, the Spanish didn't really readily relinquish Jamaica and say to the British or the English at the time, here it is, take it.
True. And the thing about it is, Jamaica, one look at Jamaica, look at all these other islands and the whole Americas. Jamaica was not such an important place to the Spanish. For one, they didn't have the population to take care of all the territories that they had now acquired. So they had just a few people. One of those conquistadors at the time. So there were few Europeans, including black Europeans, and there was a black population of Jamaica.
I like the term black Europeans.
Yes.
Are we actually talking about the Moors?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Some of those who were expelled were in Jamaica, and some of those who came with the teams of conquest. And then you had the Jamaicans who were here when they all came. And the thing about it is, they were not, the Spanish and the Jamaicans were not really fighting each other. They coexisted.
So that was really a lie that they taught us, because I got the impression from my history that the British fought the Spanish, or the English fought the Spanish for Jamaica.
Well, hold on a little. We're talking now about the Jamaicans, those copper-colored, those Indian people who were here.
Okay.
People who look like me and you, who were here in Jamaica before any European came to conquer, to settle, or whatever.
Or to steal.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm holding on to that.
Yes, so the Spanish, the few Spanish people who were here, the Iberians who were here, and the Jamaicans coexisted because they, so few in number.
So they were the more humane.
I'm not calling anybody humane or not humane.
Because later on we're going to see who was humane from who was not humane.
They were not humane when they drove the Moors out, and in the Inquisition and the rest of it. So we're not labeling anybody. what happened subsequently. When the British came, or the English came, remember, they were coming from failure in Hispaniola, bedraggled, sick, hungry, tired, dropping down. They were a set. And they came into Jamaica and they joined. They sat with the Spanish. It took a little while. I don't remember how long exactly, but it took a couple weeks or more for them to sit and negotiate and talk with these few Spanish people, while the Spanish sued for time to get a reinforcement to come and drive them out.
Did this reinforcement ever arrive?
It didn't arrive.
Oh.
And that is why the Spanish had to run away through the tunnels to the north coast, where they escaped to Cuba.
Oh, Runaway Bay.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Now, we have been told that they left their slaves to harry the English until they could return to take back Jamaica.
Excuse me? They left their slaves?
No, if you can think, just use your brain a little. These few Europeans who were here, which slave them did have?
And why would they need slaves anyway?
Even if they needed them, they didn't have any. They were not even important, because when the governor wanted reinforcement, he had to go through a lesser dignitary to tell them that they needed help in Jamaica. Jamaica was not that important, so no help came.
Oh, I see.
Because
now I'm getting it.
they didn't have the manpower to waste on a little place like Jamaica that was just a little place for them to stop and collect a little few goods and water and whatever.
Do you think that at this stage they realized Jamaica had no gold?
They probably did. Or probably they didn't even think of that, because when you have bigger fish to fry, why consider the little sprat?
And Jamaica was sprat.
So
up to this time.
Yes. So when we're told that the English came in, and they plundered and they sacked Spanish Town, lie.
Everything they taught
It was
us.
more likely the very Jamaicans who decided to burn down the place and get them out. They wanted to undercut Spain, and they wanted as much wealth as they could. So holding on to Jamaica was a good thing for them, right? They had already taken places like Barbados and the Lesser Antilles that were small. So Jamaica was their biggest fish in this ocean.
Okay, in the
right?
Central Caribbean region. Okay.
Yes. So they wanted to hold on to it. So quickly enough, their reinforcement came, while the indigenous Jamaicans who were here, who the Spanish left here, continued to fight them. Remember, I told you about that one-armed archer in Tombstone that they were so afraid
You mean
of.
Tombstone, Lacovia?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
the one-armed archer.
Yes.
We have so much history, so much of it untold, because somebody apparently don't want our history to look too good as black people.
The thing about it is, as Jamaicans, we really need to look again at that period of our history. Forget the fairy tales that we were told, and really look at our history to see what the truth really was.
But Miss Dorrit, let us get real here now. You have some black people in Jamaica who, for whatever reason they will have to tell us, don't want the status quo to be changed. So how are we, I can attest to that. How are we therefore going to get the average Jamaican to realize that there is so much we don't know, because our own gatekeepers, our own black people, some of them feel threatened if too many of us actually begin to know ourselves?
Well, the truth is that you talk about our own black people, but we are a mixed bag of people. Because look back, it wasn't just a walkthrough. They were fighting right down to Reconstruction, fighting the native, the indigenous people that look like me and you. Some of them signed a few, what they call the civilized tribes, signed treaties with the British. Others fought tooth and nail.
For what was theirs.
Yes, and some were drowned out, some were bombed out, fired out, whatever.
So in other words, what we're really saying is that the playing field was not level.
No, never level. But I'm getting to why we are a mixed bag. When they won a war against a tribe, as they call them, what they did was to take put the parents in slavery or kill them, but they would take the children and send them off to other places, many of them to England or Europe, as indentured laborers. And there they would educate them the way they wanted to educate them, using education advisably. And they would serve 25 years of indentureship. At the end of that, some were sent to different parts of the world wherever England had an interest, not back to America where they came from.
So they never went back to their people?
No.
Never learned the ways of their people?
No.
Never learned the history of who they were?
Never, no idea of who they were. So some were sent to Jamaica. And these were some of those black people who were never enslaved and who had a little money, could buy a piece of land or set up a little business. Okay? Then you had them taking other people from all over the world, from Africa, from Europe, from other
India,
parts of all over the world.
China.
Not India and China yet.
Okay.
But taking all these black people and bringing them, from India too, yes. Taking all these black people and bringing them, mixing them up. Some coming to Jamaica, some Jamaicans going to Africa, to North America, South America. So they mix us all up. So we have no idea who we were.
Really are.
Right.
What about those black people who actually were able to navigate as sailors and find themselves all over the world as well, including Jamaica,
Yes,
who were never enslaved?
Some find them home, some find other places. But the point I want to make is that we're all so mixed up. And that is why you can go somewhere else and see people who look like you, who have similar language to yours, similar
Mannerisms.
practices, mannerisms, yes, because we are all, they mix us up.
So due to this mixture then, it was necessary to find ways and means to control us.
Yes, yes.
And this is where now they had to control us by law.
Yes.
And this therefore leads you now to explain why the need for these slave laws in particular, and later on the emancipation laws. Too much mix up.
And the point was, when you mix up people, you weaken them.
Oh, yes.
Because they don't have the family structure. They don't have that bond with people who they know and who, in my family, when we were growing up, just a little family, we had our own code. How to deal with strangers and visitors and so on.
And so, even how to deal with each other too.
So you can appreciate that a whole you call them tribe would have their code as to how to deal with people.
Especially like strangers, we all know.
So when
don't speak to strangers. Yes.
When you strip all that away, then we're left without that underpinning or that support. So why did they need laws now? The fact that we mixed up and the idea that they kill off all Jamaicans,
The indigenous
all
ones, yeah.
that was such a big idiotic
So
lie.
that was another lie that
Because
we've been told.
tell me something now. It took Africans to come in to make people know that them could run to the hills.
Oh, Lord.
Or
You
go
know,
in.
that when you mix up people, they lose their identity.
Yeah.
And they become very suspicious of each other.
And when you take them from their roots, from the underpinning, from what they know, they have to now start
Again.
to understand their environment and to figure things out.
So that going to take some time now.
Yes. So that was the whole purpose. Now, when it comes to the slave laws, Jamaica, Barbados was occupied by the English in 1625.
Wow, but that was before they captured Jamaica.
Yeah, Jamaica was 1655.
So they were actually in the Caribbean, in Barbados.
Yes.
Alright.
And then the lesser other
Antilles,
islands of
yeah,
the lesser Antilles, yes. So by the time they got to Jamaica, they realized that it wasn't a cakewalk. I mean, they've been when they come to Jamaica and realize how much fight they had to put up with, it was no cakewalk. It wasn't a cakewalk in Barbados or any of the others. The native people fought.
In other words, we put up resistance from
Yes,
morning,
we've
from
been
the start.
putting up resistance. Yes.
Oh God, I love Jimmy Cliff. Yeah.
So they had to they borrowed some laws from Barbados to use to control those rebellious people in Jamaica.
Oh Lord, you mean the savages?
Yes. So I want to just say that these laws, they were what historians call horrendous. And these were not historians who were sympathetic to us.
Who were they?
These were English people.
Sympathetic to us?
I said they were not sympathetic to us. These were English people who were calling these slave laws horrendous.
I don't get it quite. If they were calling them horrendous, why?
Because they were terrible. They were inhumane.
But if they are white people and they're calling the laws horrendous, then our side, they would be a bit sympathetic too.
Listen, if you keep kicking a dog, somebody who is not even a dog lover will look and say, no, that is too much. You're too wicked to the dog.
And if the dog turn around and bite you?
Please, then still don't want the dog to bite you. But the point...
Hence the reason for making the laws.
The point I am making is that the laws were terrible. Now, when we get back to even how they treated free black people, remember I said that some of these children who they took and sent to Europe, they ended their indentureship after 25 years. And then they send them out to places like Jamaica. So they came, they were not enslaved, they were freed people. And they weren't wealthy, but they had a little something. They could buy a little piece of land, put up a little cottage, buy a horse, buy a mule, buy something, buy some livestock, whatever.
So they became like entrepreneurs then?
Even a small plantation. So they had to have laws to govern these people as well. So what they eventually did was to lump everybody according to skin color, the way they did in the Americas, the way they did in North America.
Also, this color of your skin now becomes very, very relevant.
Yes.
As it relates to your living standard and how you aspired for having ambition and that kind of thing.
Yes.
Okay.
So a black man could not wear a top hat, which was a status symbol. It says that you're a gentleman. So a black man, regardless of his status could not wear it.
No matter how educated he was?
It doesn't matter.
No matter how wealthy he
It
was?
doesn't matter.
But how is it that these white indentured servants, the moment they paid off their indentureship or their
They're white.
bondage
They are white. I said now things became according to
skin color?
a black man could not own a horse. And then later in one of their laws, I cannot remember the words exactly, but it said no Negro or other slaves. And this is a term we have to look at very seriously.
Who were these other?
We can't look at it right now because, there are different examples of how this was used. Blacks are other slaves, Negroes are other slaves, and it was not just here in Jamaica that it was used. It was used by the British, and this was as a way to reset the narrative and to reclassify people.
So something is the driving force for this reset?
Yes, the thing is the whole driving force is for the white people to control everything.
That's it.
So the black man could not own horse, mule, gelding, whatever. He was not to own anything that would constitute wealth, and he should not have the appearance of a gentleman.
Wow.
And the same thing applied to black women who had to cover their hair because
They were afraid to see Africa?
it had something to do with when you dress up your hair and you look good, not supposed to happen. So, but we always find a way back. But
But we
let's,
found I thought the creative headgear that we wore.
well, I know that is
Hold
how
on,
we come
yeah.
back. But let's get back to the men. Let's get back to the law that says that black people shouldn't own anything. Not only that they shouldn't own anything, that, but if them had a horse, a mule, gelding, must be young horse, that, or anything of such, it was to be taken away, sold, and the proceeds given to poor white people.
Oh, an animal.
Yes. So rather than a person, the black person, the Negro became property. Laws manipulated to make him property. So property cannot own property. So you took what he had.
So how then would we be able to build generational wealth? That would be
You
totally
can't.
impossible.
You can't because you don't have wealth. How you going to build wealth?
Precisely.
You're not allowed to have
So
wealth. How are you
the
going to
younger
build what you don't
generation
have?
then need to understand the value of history to see what it is that actually kept black people from succeeding.
And the thing, that is so. And the thing is, a black person was valued less than an animal.
You mean they valued their horse
Yes.
as being more important
Yes.
than their slave?
If somebody killed a horse or a mule,
Wow.
the penalty was much harsher than if you killed a slave. The master would kill a slave easier than kill an animal because the animal was worth more. Something that I didn't mention is that these people who they were now calling slaves, who they're calling enslaved, and who they told us they brought from Africa, this was all a lie. It was the indigenous people and those brought in from neighboring territories that they were enslaving.
So no one came from Africa as Africans?
Not saying nobody came from Africa, but that was later. They enslaved the people who they came there and saw. Who fight them too much, they sent them up. They what you call them? Exiled them to some other place, and people from other places were exiled to Jamaica and the rest of the Caribbean. So to them, the horse and mule and whatever that they had to buy was more important than this human being.
So we weren't seen as human beings then.
No, they had to make us less than human too.
So we were 3/5 human.
That 3/5 came out of the Americas sometime later because of political reasons.
Mm-hmm. Can you share with us some of these slave laws and the impact it had on our lives, maybe even to today?
As a matter of fact, I do have some of these slave laws, like the Barbados Code. Humanity of the slave was not considered. A slave was chattel, and he was seen in terms of his utility to the economic structure.
So in other words, the slaves were one of the factors of production.
Yes.
He was labor,
yes,
but he was not expense in that he was free labor.
Exactly.
So that was a big part of their accounting that was taken away, that did not affect profits. So when they talk about slavery being very profitable, if they were fair and decent people who paid wages, then their profit margin would not.
Yeah, so one of the things that they ensured that they did was to control the movement of black people. You had to have a pass to go anywhere if you were allowed outside of the estate. You were not allowed to work outside of the estate unless your master hired you out. You were allowed certain amount of entertainment, but it should not include drums, fife, or any other thing that black people at the time used to make music.
Why was this so? Why were they so afraid of like the drum? Was it that they thought we were using it to send messages?
But we were.
Okay, so they understood the
but it was
significance
also part of our spiritual connection.
and rituals.
Yes. So they had to strip us of that. And in doing that also, they outlawed completely obeah or anything resembling but native or black people's spirituality.
So in other words, they tried to kill the God that lived within us.
Yes, the spirit in us. They had to get rid of that.
Because the God inside of you is when you know right from wrong and when you choose to do the right things. And they seem to always want to do the wrong things that would go against anything that is close to goodness.
Exactly. So let's look again. You work 18 hours a day. You were given, at first they had Sunday market. And of course, let's not forget the little provision ground that they were given to grow a little food. So when you worked from 5 in the morning till 7 in the evening, and then you had to go find time to plant that provision ground outside of that time. And the provision ground serve so you sell a little thing in the market to get a little
extra, yes.
Yes, and also
income.
And for you to eat, you and your family and the others to eat, and also to supply the kitchen of the great house.
So is in the night them do the farming?
Yes.
Oh my Lord.
Or early morning. Anyway, so now you have a life like that. And then they're taking away your entertainment and your spirituality. What is left for you?
So black people were really just shells on the plantation?
That is what they wanted. And as we mentioned, the obeah, they were afraid of the obeah. So they had to outlaw anything that might look like you could use it to do a little spirituality upon them. And then
so that means, one second there, Dorrit, if they outlaw anything that they felt would be in retaliation, means that they know right from wrong.
Then them no human, so them no must know right
So
from
that
wrong.
means that they know they're doing the wrong thing, hence these laws to control.
And look how they further control, because black people now were using the Sunday market to
For upward mobility,
Yes.
when them save the surplus income
Yes.
or them profit.
So they took away Sunday market
Oh,
and say you
Lord.
must go to church. Okay.
And you know, in all fairness to black people, if I were probably to be favored by the master and then put me to work inside of the house and I become a house negro or I drive the carriage, I would fight to keep these
that.
privileged positions, you know. So I can't too blame them. But at the same time, it meant that because we were so mixed up, we never have any sympathy for those out in the field or the field slaves. And we degraded others because we felt we were better than.
And that is generalizing. Sometimes we give them that impression, but we were using our position to get the information to feed to the others.
Some of us.
Yes, some of us, because people are people. And we use that position to do other things that we needed to do. That's why they had to outlaw the obia and things like that, because you know, like white babies used to die very, very, very regularly, and white women used to go crazy very regularly. So you know, we had our way
Of retaliating.
Right. So now, we want to look. The slave laws were bad enough. They stripped us of humanity and they cornered us in every way and kept us on the plantation.
Like animals.
Yes. And did everything they could to Christianize us. They made our lives less valuable than the life of an animal.
Their animal. Their pets, their horse, their whatever.
And they stripped us of family, roots, friends, whatever.
Identity.
We were just part of the machinery. But if that was bad, emancipation laws were worse.
Emancipation laws were what?
Yes, worse.
Oh,
When
my Lord.
and we know we're not going to join the bleeding hearts who say, oh, these Christians felt bad for black people, so they lobbied to get them emancipated. If that was the case, why did they put things in place to compensate the planters and even give the planters more of our free labor?
Hold on a minute.
And give them the ability to make things worse for us, and didn't do anything
for the slaves.
to protect us, no, the freed people.
Yeah. So in other words,
Why did
then,
we land up in a worse position than we were in slavery?
So in other words, then, there are some of us who at this moment in time are lauding and revering people like William Wilberforce, Buxton Clarkson, and all of these so-called abolitionists who were abolitionists by default.
Yes.
Not because they loved us, because they certainly didn't. So what was the real reason why these men claimed to be abolitionists, when in actual fact, what was behind?
You know, Miss Val, let's not get into that. That's politics. Let's not get into that. The fact is that they said they gave us our liberty. But let us look at what that liberty brought us. Now, when they adopted the slave code from Barbados, that was 1669. Jamaica made their own. And they made it worse than what was happening in Barbados.
You mean the white planters, the
Yes.
brown planters
Yes.
actually wrote the laws?
Yes.
But they would write the laws in their interest.
Naturally.
Naturally.
When they were forced to emancipate, they know that they would lose their labor. They wrote us another set of laws to ensure that they did not lose their place in the society, to ensure that they continue to have free the labor as they could get at the time.
So in other words, even though they claim we were emancipated, they were so cunning that what they did was to devise these laws to keep us padlocked
Yes.
to the plantation.
Yes, because they resisted emancipation. But once the planter class lost their position in England, in the British Parliament, they had no way to hold on to it. And you remember what their compensation was for the loss of their slaves?
3,000 white and brown families actually received this money, reparations.
How much money was it?
Me no remember.
Well,
£20 million.
okay, and I might be wrong because I don't do figures well. But also, they got free labor, 2/3 of the emancipated people's time as free unpaid labor.
You mean
in
that
the case of predial laborers for 4 years, and in the case of house slaves for what, 6 years.
so them get brought
Yes.
on top of the reparations
Yes,
money?
ma'am. And it didn't work out that way, and they had to throw it over. But what did emancipated people get?
Nothing.
Nothing, except a whole bag of heartache.